Alright, what up, everybody? Colton Record back in with another video. And this one is going to be another collection video for 2020. As I stated before, I'm only doing 3 collections this year, so this will be the DVD collection. I've already done the Blu-ray collection on my channel, and then the PS4 one. So the DVD I haven't done in 2 years. It's grown decently. I'm not collecting as much for movies as I used to be, but I still pick up stuff here and there. So over 2 years, this has grown a bit. I'll also be providing ratings for all my movies, which I didn't do on my previous collection video, so it'll kind of make it a little different from the people who've watched the initial DVD collection. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Alright, so first we're going to just start off going over the ones that I've picked up recently but haven't watched before or haven't really been sorted into my collection. So these are going to be out of order, and there are a bunch of them I just haven't watched yet. So first up is Breach. This is like a spy v spy movie, something about like a US intelligence breach. I don't know too much about it, but hopefully it's decent. Next up is Bloodwork. This is a Clint Eastwood movie. I'm a big fan of Clint Eastwood as an actor, and this is like a FBI kind of whodunit movie where he plays a high-profile profiler, I'm pretty sure. Again, haven't watched it. I hope it's decent. I enjoy a good crime film, so I think I'll enjoy this one. Next up, sticking with the crime genre, is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. This is another like crime filler of the classic like whodunit type thing. This is one I've heard of, but I've never actually watched, so I'm hoping it's decent. Alright, next up is Planet Earth. These are pretty neat. I'm not huge into the whole, Discovery Channel type learning about animals and stuff like that, but I enjoy it occasionally, so when I'm in the right mood, I definitely plan on breaking this out. I know this is regarded as a lot of one of the best documentaries on nature, so I'm hoping to get into it eventually. Alright, next up is We Were Soldiers. This is another Mel Gibson movie tied to the collection. I think I have a lot of Mel Gibson movies actually, but always in for a good war movie. And after watching Hacksaw Ridge, I definitely looked up if there was any other Mel Gibson war movies, so this was one that came up, so I'm hoping it's worth a watch. Then we got Live 3 and Die Harder, or Die Hard 4.1. Die Hard a classic, so I haven't actually watched the series myself, so I hope these two can get me into it. And then finally, Magnificent 7. This is one that is a classic Western. I remember seeing bits of pieces of it on the whatever the movie channel is for Canada, the old one. But these, I've always been into the old Westerns, and this is regarded as one of the best. So I'm very much looking forward to get into this. This will probably be the first one I watch. That or Bloodworks out of the ones I haven't seen yet. Alright, so that's the last of the movies that have just been added into my collection. This is like a day or two ago, so they haven't been sorted in yet. The rest of them will all be in alphabetical order, and I've at least had them for some time, and most of them I've seen. Alright, so first up we got Big Lebowski. And as I said before in a lot of my movie collection videos or my top 10 movies of all time, I really enjoy the, kind of stupid, like dry humor comedy. And Big Lebowski is one of the classics when it comes to that genre. That and Napoleon Dynamite, I think, are two of the best. This movie's a lot of fun. It's about these two guys who, their carpet gets ruined by some big mafia head, and then they end up misplacing some money that he's owed. It's all about them trying to get the money back before they die. It's very funny. Definitely, if you're not into the very dry, like stupid comedy with some crude sense of humor, you won't really be into it. But if you love that, this is a classic in that genre. I'd probably give this somewhere around an 8. Alright, next up is The Blind video. This is a skate video from back in the early 2000s. I was big into skateboarding for a little bit. I wasn't great at it at all. I could barely ollie, but I enjoyed riding and just enjoyed the culture of it. So this is a decent skate video. It's skateboarding. If you're into skateboarding, it's a decent video, but other than that, it's just a skate video. I give it a 7. Alright, next up is The Boondock Saints. This is one I was actually surprised by how good it was. I didn't really know too much about it going into watching it off the start. I've heard about the movie. I knew a lot of people are a huge fan of this movie, and I can definitely see why. It's one of the more like interesting and it's a dark movie, but has a lot of light tones in it to kind of keep contrast going and really keep you interested throughout the movie. It's about these two, I don't know if they're brothers or just friends. I think they're brothers, and they work for the church, going around killing people, sinning around the town that they're working in, and then it follows a private eye trying to figure out who's doing it, and then slowly catching on to who's doing it and what happens from there. It's very well acted, a very interesting story, and honestly, it's one of the like surprise movies of in my collection that I bought because I knew about it, but I really ended up liking it at the end. I'd probably give this like a 8.2. Alright, next up is BORAT. This is one of those, you either love it or you hate it. This is definitely crude comedy at one of its crudest. So basically, BORAT, for those of you who don't know, is this guy who goes around pretending to be from Kazakhstan, and kind of goes around the US and kind of touring, and a bunch of just weird stuff happens during the movie. And it's all about following him, trying to learn about the US. And it's one of those movies that if you're into crude comedy a lot, you'll love it. But if not, it is definitely one to stay away from. I think it's best at the beginning and end. I think the middle's a little slow. So I'd give it a 7. Alright, next up is Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. I honestly, when I got this, didn't know Full Throttle was the second one. I thought just it was Charlie's Angels Full Throttle being like the certain edition for the movie. This is basically your classic 2000s action movie. Very cheesy action. Charlie Angels are basically just 3 ladies that go around as like secret agents type thing. And it's just following their like it's very cheesy, but it's done in a way that keeps you interested, if that makes sense. Where it's cheesy good. It's a 7. They're not amazing movies by any means, but they're a fun watch. Alright, next up is the Date movie. This is basically one of those movies that try to capitalize on the success of the scary movie genre popping up, the parody movie genre. I picked this up because I was interested because it had Allison Hannigan, and I really like her in some of the movies that she's in, but this wasn't one of them. This is probably one of the worst like scary movie, like parody type movies I've seen. It's just the comedy's kind of dry. It's very just weirdly timed comedy, and it's just pretty boring, honestly. It's just about some couple going through a time where there's a little turmoil in the relationship and them trying to get the spark back, basically. It's one of those movies that has its 1 or 2 pretty good jokes, and then the rest of it's just pretty dry. I'd probably give it a 4. Alright, next up is The Departed. Sad to say I haven't watched this yet. I bought this, I think, a year ago, honestly, and I just haven't got around to watching it yet. I've heard it's amazing, and I'm really looking forward to getting into this. I haven't sat down to watch this yet. Next up is Dude, Where's My Car? This is another one of those stupid comedy movies. I have not seen this one either. I'm hoping to settle down and watch some more movies recently. I just haven't really got around to doing it. Right now I've been busy playing Tony Hawk, so that's what I've been doing. But I hope to get around to these. I heard this one's great. Alright, next up is Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye has a really interesting premise for the movie. It's basically a kind of AI that kind of takes over and is trying to target certain things with the US, and it's about Shia LaBeouf's character and Michelle Monaghan's character trying to figure out really what it's after, where it is, and how to stop it. It's a cool concept, as I said, and I think it's actually really well done. I enjoy this movie if you're looking for a pretty good like action thriller. I'd probably give it a 7.5. Alright, now I got an absolute classic in Ernest in the Army. If you don't know Ernest, very old school, stupid comedy in a way that he's supposed to play like a Mr. Bean-esque character, where he's just over the top dumb, and it's just all about him being goofy in certain situations. Just a lot of fun to watch, and classic comedy. I'd probably give this like an 8. Alright, then we got Expendables 1 and Expendables 2. I've seen the first Expendables. I enjoy it for what it is. It's one of those movies where
you just got to expect cheese when you're going in and not think this is going to be the greatest action movie ever or like one of the greatest movies of all time. It's just good fun. It's a lot of classic action stars all in one movie. Just doing some cool scenes together. A lot of fun. I haven't seen 2 yet. I'm expecting some of the same. So I'll give these movies like a 7.5. They're really good at what they are, and they know what they are. Alright, so next up is the Family Guy trilogy. So this is, where is it? There it is. This is the Blue Harvest, something Dark Side, and It's a Trap. It's a 3-in-1 Star Wars kind of parody movies they did. They're decent. I'm not a huge Family Guy fan by any means. I prefer something like The Simpsons or South Park. But Family Guy is one of those shows that has 4 or 5 good jokes in an episode, and then the rest of it I'm not really into. I just don't like the characters as much as other cartoon shows out there. But this one's fun. It's a good parody of Star Wars. I wouldn't put it on like Spaceball level, but it's definitely a fun watch. And if you're into Star Wars or Family Guy at all, you'll get a good laugh out of it. So I'd probably give these movies probably on average like a 7. Alright, next up is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. These are the prequels for the Harry Potter films. This is the first one. I enjoyed these movies. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. Harry Potter is probably my second favorite or first favorite franchise of all time. It's either that or Star Wars. I enjoyed the Fantastic Beasts as like standalone movies themselves. My only issue with these movies is they have some very big inconsistencies and plot holes that they put into the Harry Potter universe, especially the second one. The first one, though, gets the concept good. If this was just a standalone and they didn't revert some of the things they do in this movie, in the second one, I would enjoy them a lot better. I think this first movie is really solid, though. I'd probably give it like an 8. Alright, next up is Fern Gully 2, The Magical Rescue. This was a movie I got when I was a kid. My DVD collection goes back to like when I was like 10, so I was always into collecting, like just keeping stuff, and I was always into like trading cards, tech decks, all that stuff. I collected all of that. So DVDs was one of them as well. This is just like a basic like kids cartoon movie. It's not a great one. It's okay. I'd probably give it like a 5. It's as average as a kids cartoon movie as you'd get. Alright, next up is Friday the 13th. I'm really enjoying getting these like horror movie like big bundles collections of all the old school horror movies. I'm really big into horror at the moment, and being able to buy all these movies in like a bulk purchase for like, I think I got this for like $30 is great. These are some great movies, classic slasher. I really enjoyed watching them. Some of my favorites are probably the first one, the second one, and I enjoyed the I think it was Manhattan, where they were on the boat, and he was killing everybody on the boat. I thought that one had some of the cooler kills. I know it's just not one of everybody else's favorite, but I thought it was fun. They're just fun, cheesy slasher films, some of the best, and has one of the most like iconic horror movie sound effects of all time, which is the sound whenever he teleports. It's just good slasher fun. If you're into slashers at all, I'd highly recommend them. On the whole series and all, because I'm not going to go through and rate all the movies, because they all kind of blend together really for me. I'd probably give this movie like an 8. Alright, next up is Gun to the Greek. I don't really hear this one talked about a lot when it comes to classic 2000s comedy movies. I really enjoy this one. This one follows Jonah Hill and Russell Brand. Jonah Hill basically becomes the manager or assistant for Russell Brand, who's like a superstar rock star at the time. And he basically has got to get him to the Greek, which is a theater that he's playing at. And it's all about him trying to basically kind of coop up and deliver Russell Brand to the theater while he's going on and doing whatever he can not to basically get to the theater. So it's fun. Definitely, if you're not into crude comedy, I would stay away from it. But it's a great comedy movie, and it's one I go back and watch a lot. I think out of the early 2000 comedy movies, this is one of my favorite. I'd probably give it like an 8. Alright, next up is the Godfather collection. People are gonna like kill me for this, but I haven't watched these yet. I do have the cool like collection edition for the DVDs, and they come with all these like cool sleeves with all the neat artwork on the side. I really enjoy how this one looks. I think it's missing the cover though. But I have not watched these yet. I will get around to them. I haven't sat down to watch all 3 of them because I feel like once I start them, I gotta commit to them in order. So I'm just waiting for that time to do that. I will get to them. I'm really excited to. I know they're classics. I just haven't got to them yet. Alright, next up is Goon. Goon is a interesting one. So it's about basically what a goon is, for those of you who don't know hockey. Goon's basically somebody that's put on the ice just to intimidate, hit, and fight the other team, basically. It's basically like a morale booster in hockey, or you'll use to injure star players on the other team. So basically follows him. He's a guy from American Pie who plays Stifler, if you know American Pie. It follows him as rising through like the minor leagues as a goon. So he basically goes around fighting all the people in minor league and basically beating the crap out of them. And he slowly goes up the rank to the NHL, or whatever the thing under the NHL is that they make in this movie. Basically as a goon. So he goes around fighting all the toughest goons. And this guy is the, I don't know, call him best goon in the big leagues. So it's all about him grinding so he can beat him, and then they finally fight. It's a stupid movie in the sense of there's not much going on plot wise, but it's a fun watch. I'd probably give it like a 7. Alright, next up is Gran Torino. This is an absolute classic. Clint Eastwood is one of my favorite actors, and I really enjoy this movie. It's basically about him being some crusty old neighbor, and I think a Filipino family moves in beside him, if I'm not mistaken. And it's all about them slowly becoming friends, but very reluctantly. And then they have issues with other gangs in the area, and it's about him going and protecting his neighbors. The ending scene in this movie is amazing, and still one of my favorite endings in a movie ever. So this was an absolute classic. I give this like a 9. Alright, next up is The Happening. This is one of those movies that had a great concept and was just horribly executed. M. Night Shyamalan has some amazing movies. This is not one of them. So it basically follows Mark Wahlberg. Basically, he's like a science teacher, and then all of a sudden, everybody in the world just starts committing suicide. All of a sudden, I'm pretty sure. And it's just like randomly happening all over the place, and I think it's like a terrorist attack or something like that, or chemicals being released, or a bioweapon. And it's basically about him figuring out what's going on and how to deal with it, and follows his little group of people he's surviving with. It has its interesting points, and basically up to like halfway you're kind of like, oh, what's going on? This is kind of interesting. And then the ending hits, and then like the whatever twist hits, I guess you would call it, and then it's just kind of like, that was kind of dumb. It's like a 4. Alright, then we got the 3 Harry Potter movies I own on DVD. This, along with Star Wars, I want to get all the individual DVDs for, because I honestly love how they look on the shelves when you get them all individually. Like, I have the Blu-ray collection with all of them in the one package, but I would love to get them separately for all like the artwork and stuff like that. And it's cool seeing on the spines like the year 3, 4, and I would love to get all of them. So I have The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is the 3rd movie, Goblet of Fire, which is the 4th, and the last one, which is Deathly Hallows Part 2. These are 3 of my favorite. These 3 in the first one are probably my favorite 4 out of the movies. Probably Goblet of Fire or Prisoner of Azkaban probably taking the cake for me. I enjoy these movies. One of my favorite franchises of all time. Great seeing them, like the characters grow up and the movies get slowly darker and darker, and it's just great world that was created for these movies, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I probably give these movies somewhere like a 9 on average, with Goblet of Fire and Prisoner of Azkaban being like 9.1, 9.2, a little bit better than Deathly Hallows in my opinion. Alright, next up is I Am Legend. This is a horror movie based on, well, it kind of fits with today. It's basically a virus is basically threatening the human race, and they make a vaccine, and the vaccine, I'm pretty sure, turns people into zombies, if I'm not mistaken. And it's about Will Smith surviving in that kind of wasteland, and at the beginning he's like one of the only survivors left, and it shows kind of how he's adapting and goes through how he's surviving day to day, and then basically he gets contact from somebody else during a night where he's trying to commit suicide, I'm pretty sure. And then it's about them surviving together and trying to figure out the cure because he's a scientist. And it's very interesting. I think the ending is pretty stupid in this movie if you've seen it. But the whole movie up to that is very enjoyable. So I'd give it probably like a 7.7. Alright, up next is Inception. If you've seen my top 10 movies of all time, you know this is one of my favorite. I really enjoy this movie. It still has some of the coolest visual effects I've ever seen on the theaters, and really is just one of those movies that you have to see multiple times in order to fully get everything that you're seeing, and all the information, all the little tidbits, all the things that interact with each other that you only know near the end, how they all correlate. It's just a very well written, very well acted, and to me, this movie is like a 9.5. Alright, next up is Inglourious Basterds. No, I did not get this for $25. I paid $5 at a thrift store. So the tags are just on from whatever store it was originally in. This is probably one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies. This and Reservoir Dogs are probably my favorite, with probably Reservoir Dogs taking the cake. For those of you who don't know, Inglourious Basterds is basically a World War II film, and it follows kind of a revenge scheme against the Nazis, and led by this company of, I don't know, specialized soldiers that go around killing Nazis and I'm pretty sure scalping them, and they kind of become a big like folklore legend in World War II, at least in this movie's kind of take on it. It's very interesting. The characters, Brad Pitt's amazing in this movie. The characters I create for this squad, and the bad guys, he's the main German in this movie, and he's amazing. He's the right mix of scary as a bad guy and also quick-witted. So a lot of the conversations between all these people are very interesting and funny, and it's just really well written. I'd probably give this movie like a 9. Alright, next up is The Italian Job. This is a classic Mark Wahlberg, just cheesy action movie, but I think it's one of his best ones. So it's basically, I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen this in a while. It's about a group of car thieves that come together to get like a list of cars they need to steal for some big heist or something like that. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that. I know it's a good movie in terms of like just cheese, but it's a fun watch. I have to give this one a watch and refresh myself on it. But what I remember of it is like a 7.5. Alright, next up is a Jacob Tutu DVD. This might be a throwback for some people. This was a 2000s cartoon that was on when I was a kid. I forget a lot about what this is about. I remember it's something about, I'm pretty sure it's just about him and his life and all like the weird adventures he goes on. I'd give it like a 6. It's above average cartoon. I remember liking it when I was a kid. Ooh, alright, we're getting into WWE territory. This is Judgment Day. So this is back, I think when, JBL is still wrestling. So this is a early 2000s WWE movie. This is when I was into WWE. So this was like the Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, DX generation era, and this is when I was big into wrestling. I enjoy wrestling, not so much now, but I think everybody goes through their phase of WWE, and everybody thinks their era of WWE is the best. So it's just it's an average wrestling thing. I'll give it a 5. Alright, then we got Kill Bill, the first one, classic Quentin Tarantino movie. Cool action scenes, a lot of really cool set pieces in this, and a decent story. I think it's well acted enough. Not one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies, but definitely a fun watch and a classic. I'd probably give it like a 7.9 personally. Alright, next is Knocked Up. I remember a lot of people really liking this movie when it first came out. It's basically about some guy who's kind of the unattractive type, accidentally getting a very attractive girl pregnant, and it's kind of about them slowly figuring out how to work out the baby situation, if they're actually going to be a couple, or it's just a one night fling gone bad and they're gonna like separate and do their own thing. It's interesting. It definitely has its very good parts. There's some very slow parts in this movie as well, so I'd probably give it like a 7. Alright, next up is Lucky Number 7. This is one I honestly just got based off the cover and some of the people in this movie. Like you got Morgan Freeman and Lucy Liu, who are two of my favorite when it comes to acting, especially in the early 2000s or 90s era. So I'm hoping this is good. It looks like a cheesy action movie, which is one of my favorite genres, so I'm hoping to get into this. Alright, next up we got the Matrix movies. This is like the 4-pack. Basically these movies go... Matrix is one of my favorite movies of all time. That is like a 9.5. Matrix Reloaded, slowly getting worse. Still has some cool set pieces and action scenes, but the story gets a whole lot worse. I'd probably give it like a 7, and then Matrix Revolution, the whole thing just goes off the deep end, and it's like a 6. Still great action scenes throughout this whole thing. Oh, and I haven't watched the animated one. As I was about to say, still great action scenes throughout this whole thing, and it's still interesting to watch. Like these two, if you watch the first one, give these two a watch at least once to get the full story of it. And there's some cool set pieces in there. But Matrix, the original as a standalone movie, is absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time. Alright, next up is the Mummy trilogy. Basically how I would describe these movies, and there's 3 of them in this little pack, is basically cheesy Indiana Jones. That's how I would describe these movies. So it basically follows Brendan Fraser's character going through all these different like mythical creatures that come back to life, and him stopping how to kind of get them back from the dead and put them to rest and save the world type thing. There's always a different cast of characters in each one, and they're good for a watch, and they're fun. Just turn on and kind of just have some popcorn and not really focus too much on the story or anything like that, and just have a fun watch. I wouldn't say they're amazing, but I'd give them a 7. They're solid. Alright, next up is Napoleon Dynamite. This is, in my opinion, the peak of the stupid dry comedy genre. I think this is some of the greatest writing in terms of the, just stupid comedy done really, really well. Timing's great, the characters are very interesting, and they all have their different personality and quirks, which all work really well together. So it basically follows Napoleon Dynamite through like... I'm pretty sure it's middle school or high school, and it's all about his just like, I wouldn't even call them adventures, just like wacky situations that pop up and him figuring it out. This is one of my favorite comedy movies of all time, and one of my favorite movies of all time. If you haven't seen this, even if you're not into stupid comedy, I would give this a shot, just because there's some really funny and classic scenes in this movie. I give this movie probably somewhere like a 9.6 or something. It's one of my favorites. Alright, next up is Ninja Assassin. This is one I got as a gift a very, very, very long time ago, but it turns out to be, in my opinion, one of the better hidden gem movies I've seen. So this is basically a action movie about this guy who gets banished from a assassin's clan that he was forced to join and kind of trained, and he's one of like the more badass assassins that have come out of it, and it's about his clan hunting him and him trying to work with some of the police to help stop these clans from abducting children. Some of the coolest action scenes I've seen in a movie have come from this movie, and it's just really good choreographed fight scenes. He's a badass, and this whole movie is just really cool to watch. I'd give this movie like an 8.5. I think it's one of the more hidden gem movies I've seen. Alright, then we got the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, only the first 3. I haven't seen anything past these ones. The first one is, I think, really good. I think basically it goes in order of how good they are. I think the first one's probably like a 8.5, I would say. It's actually really well done, has some good comedy scenes, decent story, and it's just, I think, the most well put together movie out of the 3. And then it just slowly goes downhill from there. I would say Dead Man Chest like a 7.5 and World's End's like a 7. These are basically pirate kind of Disney kids movies, it's basically like kind of action movies mixed with comedy and adventure. A lot of people have seen this. They're classics in their own right, but I would say the first one's the only really good movie out of the ones I've seen. Alright, next up is Platoon. This is definitely one of the darker takes on a war movie I've seen. This is basically about a platoon that goes in, I can't remember exactly which war they were going into. It's the Vietnam War. And basically it's about them, all the different characters in the platoon slowly either losing their sanity or losing their innocence, as it says on the front, and some of them trying to like rein it back in as they're going through this war, and certain ones making very questionable decisions, and it's all about the different conflicts of personalities and stuff like that in the platoon while fighting the enemy in Vietnam. It's a very interesting take on a war movie, and it's really well acted. I'd probably give this movie like a 9. Alright, next up we have Police Academy. So this is 4 of them. I'm pretty sure there's at least a couple more than 4. But basically these are very old school comedies about these group of, I don't know, fresh officers, I guess, like year 1 officers going through Police Academy and training to become cops. The first one is an absolute classic. All the characters have very interesting like little quirks to them, and they all have their different little recurring jokes throughout all the movies, and they're all really well casted, and some great timing on the comedy and delivering. I give the first one probably somewhere around 8.5, and then the rest of them are, and they're good. They definitely have the same good characters set up. It's just I find the story a little less interesting, and repeating the same jokes all the way through, it gets a little tired by the end, but the first one's an absolute classic. Alright, then we got Rey Mysterio, The Biggest Little Man. This is again back when I was into WWE, so this is following Rey Mysterio, and it kind of highlights some of his key matches. If you're looking for a decent wrestling DVD, I would recommend this one and one other that I'll be showing later. There's some actually pretty good matches in this if you're into wrestling at all. I'd give it like a 7. Alright, next up is Rise of the Planets of the Apes. So this is the first one out of the remake of the Planets of the Apes movies. I haven't seen any of the ones past this. I really wanted to, I just, again, haven't got around to it. But this one was really good. I think the remake was actually pretty decent. I haven't seen the original, so I can't really compare it to the original and how it's better or worse. But I enjoyed watching this movie. It's basically about this guy who has a friendship with a monkey, and he sends him to the zoo, and it's about them rising to take over the world, which are the monkeys. The following movies are about like wars between the humans and apes and stuff like that, and this movie as a standalone, which is the only one I've seen, I give it like an 8. Alright, next up is Russell Brand in New York City. This is basically a live stand-up comedy of Russell Brand. I enjoy him as an actor. As a stand-up comedian, not really my favorite. I didn't really enjoy this. There's only a couple stand-up comedians that I can really get into, like Dave Chappelle or Daniel Tosh or anything like that. Stand-up comedy is not really my thing, so I might be judging him a little too harshly on this, but this is like a 4. Alright, then we got Rush Hour 3. Definitely not as good as 1 and 2, but still has its moments. It's basically just like one of those classic cheesy action movies, comedy movies. So just a lot of fast-paced action and a lot of jokes in between, and just a little banter between the characters. It's just not one of the better ones. I'd give it like a 6. Alright, next up is Semi-Pro. A little nostalgia, a little blockbuster sticker on there. So this is basically a movie about Will Ferrell's character leading a kind of D-League basketball team called the Flint Tropics, and it's about him, kind of the team's fall from grace, and kind of all his and kind of gimmicks he used to try to get the team back on top, and about them trying to make a title run. And it's a very crude comedy, so again, if you're not into that, this is one I would definitely stay away from. But if you're into that, it's actually a pretty good watch. I wouldn't say it's an amazing comedy, but it has some really good points. I give it like a 7.5. Alright, so then I got one of my more recent pickups. This is actually earlier this week. I picked up season 1 through 5 and season 6 through 10 of South Park. These are some of my favorite years in South Park. I think 6 through 10 has some of my favorite episodes. South Park is one of those series that you either love it or hate it. If you're not into crew comedy and don't really like joking about serious topics, this is definitely a series I would stay away from. But if you enjoy that at all, or if you've played the South Park video games but never played never watched any of the shows, I would highly recommend giving them a watch, because if you played the game and love the comedy in the games, the movies and TV shows are exactly the same. These are some of my favorite cartoons of all time, and I would say probably as a general series, I would probably give it like a 9. Season 6 through 10s are some of my favorites though, over 1 through 5. Alright, next up is Source Code. This is one that might also fall into the hidden gem category for me. It's a very interesting movie, and I think not a lot of people talk about it. I know there was some hype when it came out for this movie, but it basically follows Jake Gyllenhaal's character. He basically is like I can't remember if he's a Navy SEAL or an Army vet or some specialized police officer, but basically he's sent into this simulation of a train that just exploded, and it's trying to figure out who's the bomber out of the train and how to stop the explosion on the train. And it's all about him repeating, trying to find clues, trying to figure out what he's doing in these simulations, and trying to figure out who the bomber is. It's a very interesting concept, and I enjoyed watching it. So, a very good movie. I'd probably go like an 8. Alright, as I said before, I would love to get all the Star Wars on DVD, so I can have them all on my shelf looking all pretty and stuff. But right now I only have Attack of the Clones. Probably the worst Star Wars movie, but I think still has some of the coolest scenes in terms of action. The Jedi like arena Coliseum fight is still one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars of all time. So definitely still a good movie. The Count Dooku fights are also amazing. Not one of the best. I'd probably give it like a 6. Alright, next up is Team America. As I said, big fan of South Park. This was made from the creators of South Park, and it basically follows a kind of SEAL team called Team America. They're kind of a mockery of the A-Team, trying to go after North Korea, and they're all like puppets. It's not great. It has some really good moments that are like really short-lived, and then it's just all downhill from there. It's not as interesting, and the comedy doesn't hit as well as South Park, and you can tell it's a lot of references to when the movie was made that aren't super popular in terms of general. So if you watch it now and didn't know anything about times back then in the early 2000s, you won't get like a lot of these jokes. I'd probably say it's a 4. Alright, next up is The Town. I really enjoyed this movie. This is a Ben Affleck movie about this group of criminals that basically are doing like their last big hurrah job, and it's about them, all their like inner conflicts leading up towards the big heist, and kind of going through their relationships, building, and their lives in between all these jobs, and then leading up to the big job that they're doing at the end. It's a very interesting movie. I'd probably give it like an 8. Alright, next up is Undertaker 15-0. When I was mentioning a WWE movie that I would definitely recommend watching, it would be one of these. I know you can get one with the more extended record that they for some reason decide to break to Brock Lesnar. Who cares about Brock Lesnar? Why would they break it with him? But that's a rant for another day. Undertaker, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Some of the greatest matches have had him in it, and he's one of those characters that has gone through generations and generations and generations and still remain on top as a wrestler. So you gotta respect it, and this is a great movie highlighting some of his best matches. And then we got 2007 Unforgiven. This is just back when I was into WWE, so I was grabbing some movies to watch. I used to watch these on my portable DVD player, for those of you who had one of those as well. So it was just a movie I grabbed because I was into wrestling. Never watched this pay-per-view before then, so just giving it a watch. It's average. I'd give it like a 5. Alright, then we got The Village. This is one that I really enjoyed by M. Night Shyamalan. He has some weird like style of delivery on his movies. But this is one I really enjoyed, and the twist and the ending was actually really well done, and I didn't expect it at all. This was basically about a remote village that lives in fear of these monsters that surround it, and it's about all like the politics and kind of like the corrupt culty vibes you get in the village, and just follows like the day-to-day operations of it, and mainly follows this girl here, and kind of follows you learning about the village, learning about the corruptness, and how this couple is trying to kind of break the norms of the village. Just follows everything after that. It's a really good movie, but a weird one. So I'd probably give it like an 8.5. Alright, next up is Watchmen. I actually got this for I think only like $2. So it was a really good price, and I'm excited to watch this one. I have not watched it yet. I know it's kind of like the darker, like anti-hero vibes for a superhero movie. So I'm hoping to get into it. I have been enjoying my fair share of superhero movies recently, so I'm hoping to add this one to one of my favorites. Alright, next up is Wild Hogs. A lot of people, when this came out, gave this movie a lot of flack, but I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a hidden gem, honestly. It's a great family watch because there's humor for everybody, and it's light enough on the serious jokes where it's still well delivered for like a family comedy. And it's just about these four dudes way past their prime, kind of going through their midlife crisis. We want to do a final like hoorah bike trip together, and it's all about like the mishaps they get to along the way. It's a very funny movie. I definitely recommend it. It's like a 7.8 ish. And then we got Yeah Right. This is a girl skateboard movie, not as in it's girl skaters. It's girls a skateboarding company and brand. So it's basically just like a video montage of all their riders. It's decent. I give it like a 5. All these skateboarding movies are like a 5, unless you get like the really good ones. Alright, next up is Zero Dark 30, and this is the last one, I believe. So this movie is basically about them going to get Osama bin Laden, and kind of the build up and finding the information about where he is, and the actual night it takes place on. It's a good movie. It's very slow building. It definitely is one of those movies where you have to be in a certain mood to like watch and learn, not just watch, because you got to pay attention. The interesting part about these movies is paying attention and learning about like their operations as they're learning about it as well. I'll probably give this movie like a 7.5. It's decent. Alright, so there you have it. That is my DVD collection for 2020. Thank you all for watching, especially if you stuck around through the whole thing. Definitely let me know some movies to get into. The one thing I'm looking for a lot on my DVD collection is when I'm going to get more of these like South Park season collections, as long as the Harry Potter and the Star Wars ones as well. And then I'm really looking for these like Friday the 13th multiple collection packs for horror movies. I'm really into those. I think the next one I'm going to get is the Halloween ones, or the Nightmare on Elm Street. Those are two I'm really looking for. And thanks for watching, and remember, everybody has some nerdiness at their core.